Assembly passed a bill that directed what became the Land Use Review Board to study and make some recommendations on how to make the permitting processor for permitting processing process. What? The permitting process easier for wood product manufacturers. So they came back with, you'll recall, a list of about 10 recommendations, and 2 of them would have required legislative action. So that's what we have in this bill. This is the result of those recommendations. So again, this is the same language that we looked at last week, but now it's been put in our legislative bill format. Before it was just like in a Word doc. So thank you to Council Ellen for doing that and for being here and walking us through this.
Yes, Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. So I'm here on draft request 26-787, your committee bill related to forestry under Act 250. Today's draft is draft 3.2. There is yellow highlighting to indicate the changes, but they're changes from the prior draft, not from what you saw with ANR and LURB's agreement. So very similar to what you've already heard about. So on page 1, Section 1 is amending 10 VSA 6001, the definition section of Act 250. So subdivision 3A is the definition of development, but underneath that is subdivision C. And so you did hear about this from the Land Use Review Board yesterday. The new language on it is on page 2. And so forestry, as referenced in subdivision D of this subdivision, does not include conversion of land for non-exempt uses, such as for a commercial or industrial purpose constituting development as defined in this chapter.
This is additional new language to statute. Yeah.
Yes, and it was in a different form in the prior drafts. This has been one of the pieces the LURB has been discussing how to phrase it, but it is sort of a I would say re-clarification of what is existing law. So just being clear that forestry is exempt from Act 250, but that doesn't include things that are not exempt from Act 250.
I think we use the example of a buffer tree, a barrier, or whatever the term is. Yeah. Okay. Representative O'Brien.
Ellen, or you might know, Dave, was this part of the sort of directive to get to this point? Was this part of the future Act 181, or was it a different standalone 250 bill?
It was part of Act 181.
It was, okay.
Yeah. So we had.
I'd forgotten what
most
of it was. Yeah.
We piled a lot of things to that bill. Yes.
And it was, I think, the result of some pressure from our committee we heard a lot of testimony, and that was what. Representative Lipsky.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Al. I'm gonna try to ask a question with a drawing.
Okay.
And sorry, I don't have a big whiteboard, but this represents a parcel of land. This represents a excluded for commercial.
Mm-hmm.
This is forested. This represents a stream that runs through. This is all forested, whether it's 50 acres, whatever. This is excluded and is subject to Act 250, and in fact has an Act 250 permit. In the process of harvesting, this is the only feasible L. I'm going to call that a landing, which is near a stream, and a temporary stream crossing, whether it's skidder bridges or a temporary culvert, might allow the forest product, the logging, if permitted use, or doesn't require permitting, to be crossed into this Act 250 jurisdiction parcel as to remove it from. Would the act of using a landing on an Act 250 portion, abutting portion, trigger an Act 250 review to you put a log landing, which is not development, and a temporary skidder bridge, which is not development? Would that trigger an amendment or additional review?
So I will start by saying, Act 250, I followed right along, so you can have it. I know exactly what you're asking. And so Act 250 determinations are highly fact specific based on the attributes of the site. So I am not attempting to give anyone legal advice in what I say next. I believe the example you're discussing is actually the language, relates to the language in section 2 of this bill. On the last page, which says no permit or permit amendment is required for logging and forestry on a site that already has Act 250 jurisdiction, as long as it doesn't conflict. So the language that I was just discussing and the language at the end of the bill are talking about the same situation, but sort of the inverses of each situation, where this first stuff in section 1 is about there not being any Act 250 permit, but as long as they're just doing forestry that is not becoming part of a commercial development, that remains exempt. But in the opposite situation, where there's already an existing permit, if logging and forestry activities are going to occur on that site, no permit amendment is needed unless it will violate any condition of that permit. And so likely what you're describing will not need a permit amendment, but it's possible, depending on that site, if that was part of the parking lot, traffic flow, like if they'd have to be careful. And so I think the language in section 2 addresses what you're describing. Okay. Diagrams.
And so we haven't finished going through the bill, and we'll get to that language, but John, did you have a question?
Yeah, what you were describing there, is that the so-called reverse? We came up with LURB, right? Which is
Yes.
funny because we talked about Stony Brook, but then there was this sort of reverse Stony Brook, and it sounds like I take what you just described there, like 10 years ago, if there was this piece of land that that didn't go through Stony Brook, had development, the rest of it had to come under Act 250 permitting. Now with this bill, you wouldn't have to amend it because you're exempt if you want to log it, for example.
And so I think it's important to remember too, in context of the report overall, is that this exemption broadly has been in Act 250 since it was enacted in 1970. And so I do think that this reflects some of the practices they have used, because these situations come up and the district commissions have looked at them. And so I'm not sure that in every single case this exemption was applied, but part of the impetus for this bill is having it very clear in statute, all the tendrils of the exemption and how it applies. And so being very clear. And so I think in the past it has been applied this way. I'm not entirely certain it has been in each case, especially since Stony Brook needs to be requested. And so this is just, again, being very clear about all that, in addition to the guidance that they've issued.
All right, why don't we go back to, I think we had gone through the first paragraph on page 2.
Yep, and so on page 2, subdivision F hasn't changed it. It still is related on this topic. The only thing that has changed is the specific reference to the Department of Forest Parks and Recs document at the end. So when development is proposed to occur on a parcel or tract of land that is devoted to logging or forestry, only those portions of the parcel or tract that support the development shall be subject to regulation under this chapter. Permits issued under this chapter shall not impose conditions on other portions of the parcel or tract of land that do not support the development, or necessary mitigation areas, and that restrict or conflict with the acceptable management practices for maintaining water quality on logging jobs in Vermont. And
That
so
italicized language.
that's the proper title of the document issued by the department. So yeah, the editors changed it to that because that is the official title. So that's indicating the official name of that document.
Yeah, okay. Representative Bartholomew.
Can you remind me if we define development somewhere?
Yes, so the definition of development under Act 250 is 6001 3A, and those are the jurisdictional triggers for Act 250. And so there are 12 of them.
So the so-called AMPs are not actually in statute, but there's a reference then to A&R rules, and that's where you would find their definition under this publication,
What definition?
what an AMP is.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, so, yeah,
Okay. So most of that subparagraph F hasn't changed, just having the official reference.
okay. And this is the meat of recommendation 9. I mean, it's part of
Yeah.
fulfilling recommendation 9.
Yes.
Okay,
Subdivision 44 at the bottom of page 2 hasn't changed at all, and this is striking pulp and log and pulp concentration yards from the definition of wood products manufacturers, restoring it to its exempt status.
exempt from Act 250, log and pulp concentration.
Yes. And then finally on page 3 is section 2, and I've already mentioned it, but there's a small change based on the negotiations with A&R and the board. So section 2 is amending 10 VSA 6081, the exemption section of Act 250. So no permit or permit amendment is required for logging and forestry below the elevation of 2,500 feet. That will not conflict with or violate any condition of a permit issued pursuant to this chapter. Permit shall include a statement that logging and forestry activities consistent with this subsection and below the elevation of 2,500 feet are exempt from a jurisdiction.
Representative Bartholomew.
That first sentence under EE, it almost sounds like there's a double negative in there. I guess it isn't, but it's a hard sentence to interpret for me. When you mentioned it earlier, instead of saying not conflict, you said you were used the word unless. Would the sentence be more clear? Because it's hard to tell what this means.
So
No permit that will not, see what I mean about a double negative? It's not really, but it feels like one.
So I would say overall that section 1 and section 2 are a bit of belts and suspenders for the existing exemption that already exists. And so in 6081, there is nearly identical language in here about farming. So this language is being added for forestry. This provision, I think, has already been implied in statute. So logging and forestry activities are exempt from Act 250. They do not require a permit or permit amendment if they do not conflict or violate any permit conditions. I guess if you wanted to change it to unless.
I'm just wondering if it would make it more clear. Unless it conflicts with or violates any condition, something like that. But maybe it's not a big deal. I just read the sentence 4 times before I could figure out what it was saying.
Did you say, Ellen, that this language mirrors the existing language for agriculture?
Yes.
So it was written back in whenever, I don't know when it was originally spelled out for agriculture, but.
Well, and I think perhaps, I guess I could check it. It may no longer match exactly because of the negotiations with A&R, but it was intended to match what the protections already in place for farming.
To a certain extent, the intended reader of this is the local district commission. So who would be interpreting this and who would be looking at this and saying, well, what does this really mean? It's going to be people dealing with Act 250
Yes, so.
and landowners, I suppose.
Yeah, you do want laws to be clear enough to be understood by the general public. District coordinators are the ones who usually do initial jurisdictional assessments. But so if you think it would need to be more clear,
No, I'm feeling we've got, as I said a couple hours ago, we have 9 bills that we're trying to push out. This is the easy one. We've got agreement from the 2 parties that actually care the most, and so I'm not saying we can't wordsmith, but any wordsmithing we do, it goes back to the drawing board. And with 3 days left, it might not come back. So,
I like it.
we're not voting on this now, by the way, and so there will be time to discuss it, but Representative Brigham.
What usually happens is the coordinator will contact the commissioners and say, what do you think about this? And then we decide.
Forgotten we have an insider here now to
Yeah.
speak to us about the process, yeah.
He wears 3 hats too.
Yeah.
No hat today.
But while we have Ellen in another 3 or 4 minutes on this bill, we can still dig in if we've got questions about, what would this mean? What would happen here? What are the implications? If there are any more questions.
I still, on this whole Stony Brook thing. Originally we heard that you don't have to request it in agriculture. So, right, if you had an agricultural parcel and you did development, it would automatically, I guess, be offered to you, or you could take the Stony Brook option, and it wasn't true with forestry blocks. Is there language in there then that puts those on equal footing now?
yes, on page 2, subdivision F. So currently, you don't see it there, but in statute subdivision E is the paragraph on farming. That is the statutory codification of that provision for farms.
And now this mirrors that language
Yes.
for forestry. Okay, great.
Any other questions?
You know,
Go ahead, Representative Brigham.
You know what's scary? I was just looking at the title of this book. We got one 30 years ago. It was like this thick. And it's grown to this. What are you watering it?
What?
What is it that you've got there?
Watering
Oh,
it with.
this is the land use laws of Vermont. It's my field guide that I carry around. I have to retab it every year. Yes, I reread Act 250 of 1970 a couple weeks ago, and it was 14 pages. And it is now almost 250 pages.
Appropriate. Yeah.
250 pages, Act 250.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so thank you, Ellen. I had at one point thought that we would ask the committee to vote on this today. We're not going to do that because we have 2 people who are not here. I do want to maybe ask whether anybody has any concerns at this point, sort of a straw poll. The bill is getting a flyby in House Environment tomorrow, I think. And then if they have any feedback, we'll hear that, but.
I have no.
Okay. All right.
Judge, good, I'm good, I understand it, makes a lot of sense to me, and Judge Matt really helped.
Yeah,
You could illustrate the next
Yeah.
one story.
Well, that's not an original Rembrandt, so.
John is okay with this, at least at the moment. All right, nobody's held to anything, but do let me know if you have any concerns then. Right. Okay, we are ahead of schedule, and we probably should take advantage of that. And pull up the other bill that Ellen is here to share with us, and that is DR 260772. So it's not a bill yet, right? It's a drafting request.
Yep.
Mhm.
Committee bill on municipal regulation of agriculture. Today's draft is draft 5.1.
Okay, everybody see that or have access to it who wants to? Just pause for a moment.
This is, I think, why we have a duck for this month.
You want to get your job. Sure. No.
And Bradley is here too because we have been a team on this.
Yes.
And so he has a lot more of the context that you all have than I do.
I think when you visit IT, Jack, you can tell them that it's timing out more quickly and they can
Yeah.
adjust that so that it doesn't shut down.
Okay, that'd be nice.
Yeah,
Henry Pearl was there all day. I would.
it's
Young
a
guy, yeah.
And Alan's here.
known bug.
Yeah. And now if I don't touch it, it won't help, right?
I think it'd be on what title?
So if you keep it.
Title 10.
Title 10, okay.
That's it. Mine stays on all the time.
Okay, so we'll shift gears again and Patricia just want to double check that we don't have anybody in the Zoom room or anybody who's, okay. So we're now going to have Ellen walk through the latest draft of the municipal regulation of agriculture drafting request. This bill also is having a flyby in House Environment. It's also in a part of title or a part of statute that they deal with. All of this will look very familiar because it hasn't really changed much since the last time we spoke. When Ellen was here last week, we had some sections that she asked us to think about. We had some conversation. I gave her some feedback. We're not voting on this today, but it is an opportunity just to better understand from Ledge Council if we've got, interpretation questions. What does this mean? I don't know that this is what the committee is going to ultimately want to vote out, but we needed to give something to the House Environment Committee so that they had a chance to review it today. I think they may have already had Steve Collier come in today to actually give some testimony on this. So, Ellen, would you walk us through this latest draft?
Sure.
Just ask a title question then. So this is Title 10, but Title 24 comes into it. So
This is all Title 24, I think.
Yes, so in this book,
is.
this book is, so Title 10 is the Conservation and Development chapter. It covers a lot more than land use. And Title 24 is the municipal government title, and it includes not only the functions of municipal government, but also their authority, which includes municipal bylaws. So yes, most of my work as land use occurs in Title 10, Chapter 151, and Title 24, Chapter 117.
By the way, that's you're not allowed to have fun book.
Wow,
This is Ellen's,
I have so much fun. I don't know what you're talking
it's
about.
Ellen's passion. Rich.
Yes.
Be careful.
Hey, I'm glad she's up to speed on it.
All right, so everybody's got this in front of them. Why don't we go ahead?
So yes, this committee bill draft request 26-772. Today's draft is draft 5.1. The changes from the prior draft are highlighted in yellow, and there's only a couple of them. It's largely the same as the prior draft. So section 1 is still the findings and intent section, and that language has not changed. Section 2 starts with the statutory amendments. And so section 2 is amending 24 VSA 4413. This is the limitations on municipal bylaws. And so this portion of the language has not changed at all. A bylaw shall not regulate farming that meets the minimum threshold for the RAPS, except as set forth in 4412, which is in the next section. It also shall not regulate the construction of a farm structure. And so that has not changed. On page 3, there is a small change. The prior version, it's highlighted on line 12, but this is to indicate that the prior version had a couple other definitions, but since you have been reconfiguring things, those definitions are no longer in this section, so they've been moved into the next section. And so section 3, this is the amendment to 4412. Again, the required provisions and prohibitive effects of municipal zoning. And so you have created, starting at the very bottom of page 3, but into page 4, of provisions related to farming in Tier 1A and Tier 1B. And so there is only a couple of changes in this section. So on page 4, it says currently that no bylaw shall have the effect of prohibiting farming or the construction of farm structures in a Tier 1A area or Tier 1B area. However, these areas may be regulated as follows, only as follows. So they cannot regulate noise, smell, lighting, and hours of operation. They may regulate ingress and egress of vehicular traffic and ensuring pedestrian safety, including regulating parking, signage, pavement markings, functional enclosure of livestock adjacent to roads. Oh, there should probably be an and there, maybe an and there. But what was removed on line 9 was language you had previously that said it required regulations relating to trained personnel to manage vehicle movement on the premises. So that last clause has been struck. They may also regulate the siting and setback requirements for new infrastructure and requiring that buildings open to the public may be developed in compliance with the fire and building safety code. In the eligibility section further down on that page, so for a farm to be eligible for the benefit of this subdivision, it shall be farming that meets the minimum threshold criteria for the RAPS and is therefore required to comply with the required RAPS rule and the construction of farm structures. However, a parcel where farming has taken place prior to July 1, 2026, that has been conserved for agricultural purposes, or farm structures built prior to July 1, 2026 shall be exempt from municipal regulation. And so it's adding that further to just be very clear on line 19, where farming is taking place in addition to where it has taken place previously.
John.
Representative O'Brien.
Just quickly, what's the definition of conserved? Because that seems like.
It's not defined.
But does it mean, I mean, you can see it means like, oh, there's an easement on it, but it has to be agricultural, or could it be in current use?
It is not specific here. I do think, I think either of those things would potentially count, but you can be more specific if you'd like to be.
Served for agricultural purposes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Ellen, so however, a parcel where farming is taking place, does this allow for change of farm use? In other words, you're in downtown Heinsberg and that becomes all Tier 1B country and you have that farm right in the middle of all that development. And if someone wants to split that up into 5 parcels and sell it to 5 different people that want to run diverse agricultural operations, would that allow? It's farming is farming is farming. Shouldn't matter if you're milking cows, goats, sheep, or growing carrots.
Right. That is the intent of this language. I did try to make sure it was broad. And so I don't see anything that it doesn't require the same type of farming. It just says farming that is taking place or has taken place on this parcel is exempt.
Mhm.
So, I don't see an issue with change of, type.
Should we? Do we put in what our intent is anywhere on this?
Yep, there's an intent section at the beginning.
Yeah,
And if there's some concern that that might be interpreted differently, we could spell it out.
mhm,
In fact, I think the idea of grandfathering land in may have come along since we had it was Bradley who had drafted the intent language. So that would be, I think, easy enough to add a sentence there if anybody's not comfortable with what we have here. But it does seem to me, just my reading of it and hearing Ellen say, confirming that this would be interpreted to mean if you're farming on it today or on July 1st,
mhm,
doesn't matter what you're farming. And
yeah. Okay,
Representative O'Brien.
So this does mean that if you take a fallow piece of land in tier 1B, start farming there after the state, that municipalities can regulate you.
So it does say farming has taken place prior to July 1, 2026. I apologize that I don't know if I know the full definition of fallow. So is it mean, are you saying,
Just say a
Just
piece
a-
of land, you know, it could be prime ag land, but it hasn't been farmed for 25 years, but it's a nice piece of soil.
then bush up.
And then a farmer starts there.
So-
Farming. Then
I think under this language that if you can demonstrate that farming had taken place there prior to this, you could argue that it is exempt from this.
like in 1830, like there were sheep there. I mean, I just wondered how far back you go.
I think that is a valid point.
I will say, and this is really my fault for not having had a chance to review this in the time since Ellen sent to me this morning. I think that we had intended to have that farming is taking place language replace the prior to language.
Prior to,
So that it was the thinking was if it's happening now, if it's farming now, it qualifies. I think that was the last conversation we had.
I'm just worried we're gonna have two classes of farmers. We're gonna have ones who are exempt and all new farmers who take prime
We
ag
are-
soil, they're gonna be in a special category.
We are going to, yeah, I mean, I think that is true. And what we're trying to do here is mitigate, how different are those classes? So if you are not grandfathered, if you're using land that ultimately, does not fall into this exception, then we're giving the municipality the ability to do something. And it's then a question of, well, what is that something? And those things are spelled out here, at least, tentatively spelled out here.
Yeah, I think it's spelled out where you can, if you have a 2-acre house lot in tier 1A, you can still have chickens and sell the eggs and have a robust garden and sell your vegetables to your neighbors or give them away donation or however you want to do it. I think it says that here.
But you can also farm.
Yeah.
That you can't be prohibited from farming, but they can regulate, the town,
The other things that are mentioned.
the town can regulate egress, ingress.
So even
setbacks.
new farms going forward can only be regulated by municipalities with what's described.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So in that sense, it is a different, however you described it, John, two different categories.
Right, of farming.
Yeah.
But quite restricted though.
So am I making a change on?
Flag that,
Okay.
yeah, and I think we need to
take out that farming is taking place,
Yeah.
just leave it a parcel where farming has taken place.
So we'll discuss that, but let's just flag it for now. Yeah.
Okay. The only other change also on page 5, there's two small changes. The definitions of food and poultry are in this section. Because you have subdivision 16 on page 5, which is that no bylaw shall have the effect of prohibiting cultivation or other use of land for growing plants for food, for personal use, donation or sale, including orchard crops, viticultural crops, and for maple sap. Or the raising, feeding, or management of poultry, excluding roosters, for personal use, donation, or sale. The only change here at the end of that sentence is that I had proposed additional specificity here about affirmatively describing what the municipality could do, but that has been struck. So now it is just that a bylaw can't have the effect of prohibiting cultivation. So there may be some ability for the municipality to regulate, but they can't overregulate to the point that it is unable to happen.
So a town could say you can't have a chicken coop within 10 feet of your neighbor's, 50 feet of your neighbor's property. But if your lot is only 30 feet wide, that would functionally prohibit you from having chickens or having a coop anyway.
Potentially. How big are chicken? A chicken coop wouldn't be able to fit.
I was thinking just about the setback.
If you had
Well-
100 chickens.
Well, and so I do think the town's authority under this language would allow them to create some setbacks, but that wouldn't have the effect of prohibiting cultivation. It would just be on a smaller scale than perhaps full unlimited regulation.
Yeah, I mean, they can't have rules that are,
Yes.
that make it impossible for you to do chickens, yeah.
Okay, this might be really going into the weeds, but, it says for maple sap. After you harvest that maple sap, you need to boil that sap. So should it say for maple sugaring, which I think would include harvesting of sap and boiling of sap? And I could see someone getting persnickety because somebody's got an arch going at 9 o'clock at night and a stack and steam and whatnot.
That make it smell nice. It goes across the neighborhood.
I'll sweeten them up.
They pay extra for.
That enhances the neighbor's property value, actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a small little jug because your 15 trees are only gonna make a little bit, but
Almost every time I come in here, we discuss maple sap, and I almost never have an answer ready. So the production of maple syrup is part of the definition of farming.
okay.
And so I was gonna phone a friend to see if this came up in the prior discussion, but I suspect it says maple sap and not syrup because that is one of the gray areas where whether or not it is farming is when you have sap before it becomes syrup. But I wanted to check.
We have not discussed.
Oh, okay. So,
Sap is a forest product, syrup is
right.
according to law.
Well, but I think the intent here is to say that a town can't prevent somebody from sugaring. I mean, I don't know whether towns can prevent people from growing trees, but this is growing plants for food. So we wanted to be sure that we were saying you can grow a maple tree for sap, because that's a precursor anyway to food. Jack.
Just say maple.
Well, there's a lot of precedent here in statute, so I think that there's an answer, but maybe we can ask. Let's flag this, and if there's any, we want to be just sure that we're not giving a town that we're doing what we want to do here. Yeah. I think that the league would, as they pointed out, that there are no towns that prohibit chickens, for example. They might have restrictions, but nobody prohibits chickens. We certainly haven't heard any testimony suggesting that there are towns prohibiting, planting maple trees or tapping them, or even sugaring, but I don't know. So we'll flag it. We'll dig into this some more. Good question. SAP, as you say, every time, yeah, every time you're back.
Yes.
And it's confusing because it's both agriculture and forestry.
So those are the only changes in this draft.
Okay,
Section 4 is still that report. And it hasn't changed at all.
okay.
Where do apiaries fall in this? Because that's another tricky.
That's another one. Every time Ellen's in here, I think we ask about it.
No, and I don't know. I can look. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm just wondering, if a school wanted to have bees, for example, could the municipality say no?
I don't know. I can look. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, wait. The raising of bees is part of the definition of farming. I don't know what the RAP regulation of it looks like.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So that's farming.
It is part of the definition of farming.
Okay. We haven't, I'm just gonna say, not to open up hornet's nest here, but
Please not.
we haven't included anything about bees in this right to grow food section. So a municipality presumably could regulate somebody's keeping of hives in a, in a non-farming way, I think a small scale. They could do that today, presumably, and we haven't said that they wouldn't be able to do that going forward. Okay. So while we have Ledge Council here, just any other questions of interpretation? All right, Ellen, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Fred Shulman, Office of Legislative Council. I just, can I have more clarification on the issue between sap and syrup?
So this is in the right to grow food section, the so-called right to grow food section, right? Municipalities right now may have authority to tell people they can't grow trees. I don't know. They might have authority to say you can't build outdoor little,
Not sure else.
what do you call it? Well, I'm thinking outdoors.
Yeah,
An arch, yeah. In terms of building a little sugar house. This is not agriculture, right? This is just somebody who has a hobby, because if it's agriculture, then I think it's covered.
This is 16, so we're talking about.
We are talking about 16, yeah.
So that is a real life scenario. There is a young couple in Middlesex that were putting up a sugar house on their property. They tapped like 50, 60 trees. And they had to go before zoning because the logical place to put it up is kind of in a setback area. And I said, well, your agriculture, you ought to be able to defeat that because there is no tier 1B right now, but they were going through the zoning steps because they thought their zoning administrator thought it'd be no problem. Which is, fine today because they have a zoning administrator that says it should be no problem. You get a different zoning administrator that the book is black and white and no gray, then it becomes an issue. And there's some of them out there.
And they weren't farming.
No, they're homesteaders though.
Yeah.
They get
So if they sold their syrup and made $2,000, then they would be farming, so they wouldn't have to go through that permitting
Yeah,
process.
they're gonna have to really add some CBD to it or something, that kind of value out of it.
Can I ask one more clarification question? So the goal of the committee is to protect both the growing of plants for the maple sap and processing that maple sap into syrup. Is that correct?
Well,
Or,
how does the committee feel about that?
oh, no, I'm sorry, because I just wanted clarification.
I see that, yeah. I think that is the goal of the committee. So let's flag that.
Okay.
Representative Pringles.
So you can sell sap. That's like a forestry product.
Yeah.
Now, in our town, our zoning says, no zoning for ag structures. But there is 25-foot setbacks where you couldn't put the chicken coop or the garden shed has to be 25 feet from the line. So they may be, what's gonna take precedence there, what's already in place on the town regs, or it's like he said,
Statute controls.
Statute controls, yeah. So I don't know whether that's a farm structure that you're talking about, but I think the setback they wouldn't be able to enforce that, would they? For an ag building.
Well, it would have to depend, well, it depends. And so it would be, if it went through the Agency of Ag process to get it deemed a farm structure, then it would be exempt if you pass this.
They would have to go through that process though.
I have it deemed as a farm structure, yeah.
Seems like as soon as we get into the issue of boiling sap, it can get really complicated fast, because if you're dealing with a municipality that has zoning and inspection requirements, a sugar house can be pretty sophisticated. They can be simple, but usually they're more than just a shed. So you could be dealing with setback, you could be dealing with electrical codes, water, just could get really complicated really fast when we start talking about a sugar house.
Well, and it might fall under accessory on farm business at some point too. Yeah.
But if you're giving it all away, then you wouldn't be a farm. You'd be, just tapping some trees, boiling the sap and giving it all away. And you're never going to make $2,000. I don't know. It's just,
$50 a gallon, 40 gallons.
but if you're giving it away, you're not making anything.
No.
So in other words, you're saying sugar is a sticky situation.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Ellen, thank you very much for joining us.
It's,
Come back, more
I
seven Bs
think
ahead.
if you're giving away, though it should be given away an equivalent of that $2,000
Does it work
value.
that way?
I know it doesn't say that.
So
No, it doesn't,
I don't think so.
That's something we can do next year.
That's another topic.
Yeah.
Plus, if you're building a sugar house, you're probably, with only 50 trees, you're not gonna make $2,000. You're gonna be losing money.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
it actually. No, because even if you're over in Jack's country and you have those phenomenal sweet trees, which they could be sweet trees, you could get better than half a gallon.
Some trees on the front lawn that catch over fog.
So,
If you, Jersey trees.
we,
Fertilizers there, that's always 100, 200 years.
we're going to continue this conversation, but why don't we take a break? And when we come back, we have on the agenda to talk about Paraquat. And I just wanted to have an opportunity for people to say what they were thinking now. We're going to try and